What is Mother Earth calling me to do? What are the poetic acts that emerge out of the center of my heart? That I could offer to nourish and to nurture.
Good evening, and welcome to Global Harmony House, our Insight program for this Thursday night. Like it is every Thursday, and we're glad you have joined us. And we would like you to relax some more after that meditation as we bring you an interesting evening tonight with special guests and special unannounced speakers too. But I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful MC, Sister Louise. So Louise, are you there? I'm not hearing you. Is there something that we have to do? You are muted. Louise, let's see. Ask to unmute.
Okay, how's that now?
This is much better. When you
It's not allowing me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, now we'll start again. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Eric, and Om Shanti, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday night conversations at Harmony House, where we all, I know, look forward to a peaceful evening of insight, meditation, and everything we seem to need in these troubling times of trial. And the theme for this month has been creating nurturing spaces in the midst of anything that's going on in the world. And the topic for tonight is freeing the heart from fear. So I don't think we could have picked a better topic, because I think that we all have suffered the crippling effects of fear, even in the heart. You know, a lot of times we think of fear, or I do, in the mind, but I am very aware of how fear stops me from being free to love, to share, to be compassionate, because if I'm busy thinking about myself, then I don't have much room for you. And if I am paralyzed with fear, then I don't even have room for me, the me that the Brahma Kumaris believe, and I've come to learn and believe, is innately loving and innately peaceful. My heart is metaphorically the place where there is innate wisdom. And so we're going to learn about that tonight. I know that you've heard us say last week that fear is a disease, a dis-ease of the soul, of the soul's heart. And to heal it, we have to tap into that innate wisdom of the heart and use it in a creative way to transform ourselves, no matter what. So in order to do that, we need courage, we need confidence, and we need clarity. And with these powers, we can go to the cause and the symptoms of our fear and then transform it. So tonight, we will be going on a journey together with a very special guest speaker or two or three. And we hope to, by the time you leave us this evening, to restore the original love of the heart. So our guest speaker this evening is Sister Gayatri Naraine, who has dedicated her entire life to exploring the spiritual dimension of personal development and growth through the studies of Raja Yoga, which she's been studying for 45 years, believe it or not. She is so young and vibrant that it's hard to believe she's been with the Brahmins for 45 years. I happen to know her personally through her classes, through her insights, through my own attempts to liberate my own heart and realize that studying all the knowledge that I've learned at this university, the Brahma Kumaris University, is all just in my head and stops there unless I can bring my heart into it and feel the love that the universe has for me, feel the love that I need in order to apply what I've learned. So I'm really looking forward to introducing her to you this evening. She is also, and has been for many years, our United Nations delegate from the Brahma Kumaris. And she is our representative. She's also vice chair of the International Day of Yoga Committee at the United Nations. And she is has co-authored a number of books, including The Story of Immortality, A Return to Self-Sovereignty, and Something Beyond Greatness, Conversations of a Man of Science and a Woman of God. I have been very fortunate in knowing her personally. As I said, she is, although we have many guests speaking here who come from around the world, thank you to the miracle of Zoom, Sister Gayatri, I know very well from Harmony House and from the New York region, and I've been privileged to learn so much from her over the years that I've been studying. So I'm wondering if Sister Gayatri is here yet. How are we doing?
I have not seen her check in. One of the
Okay,
minor miracles of Zoom is that it doesn't always allow you to find the right place. So I think she's still checking.
Okay, I did send her the correct number about 5 minutes ago, and she told me she was here, so I'm confused. But let's see. I know that Sister Michelle is here with me this evening. Is that right? Are you there, Michelle?
Okay, I think I've got a phone call. Let's try that.
Okay. There she is. Sister Gayatri, we need you to unmute. Sister Gayatri, can you hear me?
Not quite.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I promise you it will be worth the wait.
Sorry, Louise, the host had to unmute me, and so I was waiting to be unmuted. So it has been quite a start.
Well, you missed a superlative introduction.
No, I heard it all. I was on from
okay.
4 to 7. I heard it all. I have been moving from one, link to the other. I've been following everything religiously. So here I am at last. At least you can see me.
Then I have to confess that it wasn't that superlative, because I just want to say face to face that we are delighted to have you this evening. And I invited many people to come to hear the wisdom that I've been fortunate enough to reap from you. So without further ado, you are introduced.
Thank you.
Okay.
So hello, everyone. I'm sorry for a beginning that seems to have been uncertain, to say the least. But it's wonderful to be with you this evening and to be talking about something like freeing the heart. I think it is such a timely subject because there is, like, the heart of humanity is totally broken. And the question is, as the Bee Gees would say, how do you mend a broken heart? And so here we are this evening talking about freeing the fear. How do we free the heart from fears? I'd like to begin with a little reflection so we could all settle in and we could all center ourselves. And I'd like to begin with some words from Dadi Janki and the way she describes the heart. Dadi says, everything starts with the heart. The heart takes in sorrow, happiness, love, and the heart harbors feelings. These feelings shape our attitude, our vision, and our awareness. We have to clean up the heart by dealing with issues and feelings, by taking what we need and placing a full stop to what we don't need. When the heart is true and clean, the attitude and vision become pure. And only then will God remain in our awareness. When I remain introverted and focus on the loving intellect, and I connect this loving intellect in remembrance of the source of God, God can pull me up at any time. And I can draw that love at any time. This elevated relationship empowers me continuously and frees me from all types of fear. Now, Dadi Janki left the body. She passed this year in March at 104 years old. And she was the administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris. And I wanted to start off with her voice because one of the things that she always took us back to was the heart and the pure feelings in the heart. And of course, Dadi Janki was a firm believer in God. She had a relationship with God like a friend. And she would explain to us how this pure feeling that the soul, the human being, the soul can access from God. This was the love that could purify the soul. And so for me, what I see as working toward freedom from fear as the first step is that exactly what Louise said in her introduction, that fear is a disease of the soul's heart and it can be healed. So how do we heal a heart that has been broken in so many pieces? There is an inherent wisdom in the spiritual heart of the soul. And that wisdom is courage, is confidence, and is clarity. Fear is an inner obstacle that holds us in bondage and paralyzes us. Freedom calls for courage, for confidence, and for clarity. So freedom from fear is connected to not the mind, but to the spiritual heart of the soul. When I am in the awareness of being a soul, or as we would say, when I am soul conscious, I access my spiritual heart. So what is the spiritual heart? Living in the intellect of the soul is love. So this is why when we say, if you want to know what truth is, don't look into the mind, but look into your heart. Because living in the intellect is actually the heart. It's the conscience. It's where I'm able to discern. And so this spiritual heart has deep wisdom. There's a deep knowing in that spiritual heart that goes beyond the intellectual, but it goes within the intellect, deep within the intellect, and it accesses that spiritual heart. But covering this wisdom are layers of illusions that manifest in different forms of fear in our lives. So in order to free myself from these layers of illusion, I need to cultivate the power of my heart, as this is the only way to deal with my fears at the level of the cause of the fears, and not just to be fighting with the symptoms in the mind. And this is why they say the mind is a battlefield, because it's constantly fighting with symptoms, but it's not able to access the causes of the symptoms. So I repeat, fear is a disease of the heart, and we can free our hearts from this fear. When my feelings are hurt, I don't like it. I feel that it's not natural. I also can feel that it's not fair. I can say, I'm a good person at heart, so why am I being treated like this? So the mind would carry on with this kind of conversation, but there's a deeper reminder that is causing the mind to question these things. And that is deep under this reaction to, it's not fair, I'm a good person at heart, why am I not being treated good? I don't like it when I'm hurt. Deep under this reaction of this feeling of hurt is hidden wisdom. And that hidden wisdom is something that, from a spiritual perspective, to free the heart from fear, I'll have to reaffirm. I'll have to emerge this pearl of wisdom through a reaffirmation. And that is, originally, the heart is filled with unconditional love. And the heart has a tremendous capacity to trust. So that reaffirmation, originally my heart is filled with unconditional love. And I have a deep capacity to trust. But all the layers of illusions are hiding this wisdom from me. So what was the cause that this wisdom of the heart got hidden away from me, and I was left with the illusions manifesting the symptoms of self-doubt and low self-esteem? One way of looking at the cause is what caused those symptoms then? How can I look to find out what is causing those symptoms of fear, those illusions that I have accumulated? And one significant way of seeing it is perhaps you have to look back at the journey of your life. And as we move along this path of life, we would have encountered experiences that may have been beyond our understanding and our ability to cope with it at that time. So, for instance, one such circumstance that led to an experience that left layers of illusions would be my parents or others I trusted may have done something to break my trust, and I'm afraid to trust again. So the cause, that situation that happened, the symptoms, afraid to trust again. Another example would be, we may have experienced financial loss and insecurity that left us with a fear of poverty. And this fear of poverty showed up with symptoms of uncertainties. And these uncertainties created heaviness in the heart. Another may be, we may have lost a near and dear one that left us with deep grief and an inner void in our hearts. And so we live with this void of wanting what that person had given me and seeking it in every other relationship that I encounter, but not getting it in the same way. And the deep grief keeps surfacing again and again. And look at life now. Look at it in its present state. We are experiencing COVID-19 that is resulting in a lot of compromises we have to make. But most importantly, the impact of COVID-19 on our health and well-being is by the moment building inside of the heart an anxiety of the unknown, an anxiety of what will happen, an anxiety even in which in my heart lies that fear of my own mortality, the fear of death. So when something happens that is beyond our ability to cope, what happens is that the heart registers a strong feeling from that situation. And then the feelings are there, but my mind, which is usually my protective mechanism, that mind, what the mind does is that the mind draws conclusions from the feelings I'm having. And then the mind goes into a creative mode and creates self-limiting beliefs about that feeling I'm having. For instance, the feeling I would have would be of anxiety, the cause would be of COVID, but then the mind would create these self-limiting beliefs about myself. Like I would say, the world is not safe, I'm not lovable, you never know what is going to happen to destabilize the normal routine that we used to have and we became accustomed to. What will my children and grandchildren grow up to be? And what kind of a world will they be living in? So the mind then catches on to these feelings and start making these conclusions, drawing these conclusions that are quite self-limiting. When this happens, especially if it comes from either something very traumatic or it comes from a repeated occurrence of something, then when this occurs, that feeling form, which I'm calling now, when I feel, that feeling takes on a form inside of my heart. And that form becomes a habit. So when these repeated traumatic or occurrences occur in my life, then my heart begins to create a habit of feeling a certain way. And I'm calling that a feeling form. And that feeling form or that habit of the heart is then imprinted in my heart. And so what is this feeling form? This feeling form or habit of the heart is a mixture of memories, of emotions, of thoughts. And the thoughts are about those feelings that I have that got imprinted on me based on experiences that were beyond my ability to cope. And then what gets formed is a tangled web of subtle threads of feelings and of thoughts that seem to take on a life of their own and growing bigger and bigger each time they're triggered. And so what happens is that my heart becomes encumbered, weighed down, experiencing these burdens and these barriers and these blockages. And these are like clouds blocking the sun of my spiritual heart. And these feeling forms or habits of the heart can actually make me physically sick due to the attitudes and behaviors that are formed out of them. So what do we need to free our hearts from? Remember, fear is a disease of the soul's heart, and it can be healed. So how do we heal a heart that has been broken in so many pieces? There is that inherent wisdom that I told you about of unconditional love and a deep capacity to trust. And it is from that wisdom that my courage, confidence, and clarity will emerge. So I think as a process, what I would encourage us all to do in order to free our hearts from our fears is, first of all, look at the cause of the fear. So for instance, if I'm having fear of ill health or getting sick, and that is building in my heart, then I have to look at the cause of it. And that cause may be the present pandemic I'm facing, and it has served to erupt the deepest fear that I seem to be suffering from. And this fear is driving me to become like disabled, dysfunctional, debilitated. And so, but it's coming from the pandemic. So first of all, it is good before you free yourself of something, try to look at what caused it. What is causing me to feel this? The second, after identifying the cause, and of course it goes together, one doesn't come, they work together. I would then be able to see that the symptoms. But when I'm seeing the symptoms, I must look at the symptoms with confidence. So I'm going to look at the cause with the courage to see it. And then I'm going to be seeing the symptoms with courage, because it does require me to have the courage to see something for what it is that's emanating, that's coming from my heart, without being judgmental, without putting myself down, or without feeling guilty, without having that doubt. So I am going to look at these symptoms. One of the symptoms that tells us that we are having fears, and the fear of the pandemic, to be specific, is that perhaps I would start experimenting with a lot of different diets and cleansing approaches. I want to keep my body clean then. I want to have the right things to eat, but I become like a maniac at doing it. I become like, oh, that's all that's occupying me. So the symptoms are showing themselves up in this, even though the intention is good, but the symptoms seem to be racing. I seem to be wanting to live, and time is taking away my life. So that kind of a symptom would show up. The fear of being asymptomatic. Do I have this COVID? Do I not have it? I may have it and I don't know, and others can catch it from me. Afraid of going out after being in lockdown and social distancing. I got a kind of a security in being in a safe space. Now I don't want to leave that safe space and go out and be with others because I'm so scared. And again, my heart starts palpitating. It affects my heart. Again, another thing about the heart is that it loves to talk. It loves to tell people what it's feeling. And so always talking about the susceptibility to the virus, telling people about your discomfort, always wanting to solicit sympathy from them. And in the name of sympathy, we would call it compassion. So that's not a symptom of the cause of the pandemic. And I have to look at these with courage to see if they exist. They may not exist, but they're the courage to look at my heart and see them. And then finally, people are getting addicted to drugs, including painkillers and antidepressants. And again, a lot of the psychiatrists and psychologists are having to work with people to have the courage to look at what is driving them towards the increase of painkillers and antidepressants. So I have to then face those fears with confidence. And in conclusion, I want to explain to you, before we actually decide on a spiritual practice to free ourselves from the fear, I need to know what fear is when it exists in my heart. Now I know the cause, I may know the symptoms, but now I have to free myself from both the cause and the symptoms. But what I'm really freeing myself from is the fear. So once I can access my spiritual heart, knowing that there's wisdom in my heart from which courage and confidence and clarity will come, then I'll want to, going into my spiritual practice, will want to explore at a deeper level what this spiritual heart is all about. And I say the spiritual heart has the creative art of transforming feelings. And what does that mean? It transforms tensions and stress into capacity and into resilience. When we start the journey of healing our hearts, the one thing we dread is fear. We dread the fear of reliving the pain and the hurt. But we have to face the fear of the pain. And we can do this in actually two ways. Fear can be a transformative way to bring out the best in us. So fear is not always bad, bad, bad. But we can transform the energy of fear and make it something transformative that could bring out the best in us. Or if I see it as fear, 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 bad, 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 that will take me down a spiral of blame and of denial. And it will take me into parts of myself that is most wounded. So not to deny the fear, but to go into our exploration to heal out of the fear by tapping into our innate wisdom of the soul. And this is what I call as the art of the creative heart, of the spiritual heart. And so the spiritual heart has a wisdom and a sense, spiritual sense. And so it can see both the darkness and the light. The heart's ability to discern is actually the heart working with the intellect. And we call it the loving intellect, because the intellect discerns. But it is only when the intellect works with the heart on the basis of love, can the heart discern, and the intellect, of course, with this love, discern darkness, which is the fear of ignorance, of my illusions, from light, which is my wisdom, which is my strength. And it will then have the courage to see what is real. Truth from falsehood, right from wrong, positive from negative. And so this clarity of this creative art of the spiritual heart of transforming fear into strength actually lies in developing a practice. And the spiritual practice, all spiritual practices, has a principle as foundational to the practice. And so I know that I'll take you into the practice a little bit later, but this foundational principle is whatever you focus your attention on, when you go into your heart, that's what you'll see more of. And that's what you bring into being. And that's what you'll get more of. So then you will choose, because you will choose the lightness, you will choose wisdom, you will choose the truth, so you will have to make your choices there. And so for this practice, it isn't something that is heavy. You don't go in there with a hammer banging on your heart. You don't go in there, with a gun shooting your fears. No form of violence. But what you do it is in an art form, and I call it dancing with your fears, is a creative art that leads to freedom. And so I'll stop here, and I will ask Louise if she wants to engage in a conversation, because I know we started a little bit late. And so we can maybe have a conversation around what I just said, and then I could do the final meditation.
Yes, and I also would like to invite the audience to enter any questions or comments they might have for Sister Gayatri. Thank you so much. Well, my focus right now, after listening to you talk about how we need courage to face our fears and we need clarity, I think most people here tonight may be very used to asking for help from the outside of themselves. And from what I gathered, your whole approach this evening has been to look within, to what's innately there. And that's a concept that I find fascinating and true, because I hang around with people like you. But I also find that clarity, we can have all the wisdom in the world. We can learn all the knowledge in the world, but without bringing the feeling into it. And of course, the thing that interferes with that for most of us, especially now, as you're the first speaker I remember since this pandemic who really enumerated the specific, detailed fears that people in the audience here who are looking for peace are going through. So the second thing that struck me, the idea of transforming fear into your helper, into dancing. I love that expression that you use, dancing with the fear. Could you, or would you want to give us a specific example of how, even early on, you personally did that? Because right now, I'm sure you seem up on a pedestal and miles away from most people who have come here this evening and are very eager to hear how to do that.
Well, what I would say is dancing with your fears means that you're engaging with a part of yourself, with the elusive. It may be an illusion, but you are trying to get to know it and try to become comfortable with it, even though it's not good for you. But you don't want to treat it as an enemy. Don't make your fear into your enemy, but make your fear into your friend. So one of the ways that this is done is that, we here, the practice that we have is always to center yourself and to be aware of yourself as a soul, and to have the awareness that the music that I'm going to dance with my fear with, peace, I chose peace. So if that's the music I want to play to dance with my fear, then I'm going to be in the awareness of that music of peace. I'm going to be in the awareness of peace. I'm going to calm myself. I'm going to touch my still point, and I'm going to relax, because to dance, any kind of dance, you need to relax. You can't go in there all stressed and tensed and expect your dancing partner to follow that. It wouldn't be thing. So then in doing that, what you're doing is that you're identifying that fear. And then you're acknowledging it as the fear seeking its freedom. Now, this is an important element, because usually I hold on to the fear. And the fear may be seeking its freedom, but I don't let the fear go because I'm holding on to it. So in acknowledging it, I'm saying, okay, fear, here, I'm giving you your space, and I'm acknowledging that you are seeking your freedom. So now if that fear is, I'm going to get sick or whatever, I'm allowing it to move out. But the thing is that before it will go, I have to feel it for what it is. I have to acknowledge it, and I have to feel it too, not just see it, but feel it for what it is. But the aim of feeling is to work it out of my system. And the other is to work it out of my system, I must get curious about it too. You know, it should kind of spark my curiosity, that curious about what is causing this fear, and then also be prepared to work with the symptoms as they emerge.
So you're talking about, if I'm hearing you right, willfully detaching from the fear, looking at it objectively.
Right.
And saying, okay, you're trying to bully me, but you really want freedom, so I'm giving it to you. And just sit, and I love what you said about you have to feel it for what it is before you can let it go.
Yes, otherwise you'll be in denial of it. You'll be in denial of it, and to be in denial of anything, you make it your enemy.
That's
right?
Incredible.
It's incredible. And then what happens is that, you know, you will draw a confidence inside of you. You use the word detachment, but I'm saying we're holding on to things we don't want. And sometimes that is our Achilles heel, to hold on to something we don't want, because we're living in a conflict. I don't want it. I want to let it go, but I'm holding on to it. And so this is the tension of the detachment and the attachment. And in between the two is my authenticity. So if the spiritual wisdom is to return to my authenticity of my heart, then I can't hold on to things and then want to let and expect them to go while I'm still holding on to them. So I think that's a very key aspect of freeing the heart.
Beautiful. So that is transformative right there. I know that I've never heard it expressed that way before. Yeah. That we really need that it's seeking freedom from our grasping it.
Right. And that's why I'm using the word way. It's a creative way, and it's a transformative way, and maybe it's even a cooperative way. So a way means I'm moving through. You know, I'm moving through something, and in moving through something, I get to know it like I would have never been able to know it before. And so, but these are all qualities of the soul: to be creative, to be cooperative, to be transformative. Doesn't happen from an external paradigm, but it happens from within a spiritual paradigm.
Yes. And the whole concept of that fear bringing out the best in us is the opposite of what we may be thinking when we're the victims of it.
Exactly.
So it's really, so the power is of spiritual power. The power is within me, and it's looking for trusting something beyond the thing that I think is killing me in the moment.
That's
whether
right.
It's pandemic related, or it's related to former lives, or it's related to my mother did this to me when I was 4, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So the clarity you're talking about is a pipeline to something greater than myself. That lives in my heart. Am I right? Is that
yes. And you know, but going back to the cause of the feeling form that has been left within you is important. Otherwise, okay, when I was 4, something happened to me. A feeling got left within me, but my mind drew conclusions from that feeling. Oh, she didn't love me. Oh, I wasn't wanted. Oh, she didn't have time for me. And so the mind made sense out of that and drew a conclusion. So if I were to go back to the cause, then I would understand the symptoms. And then once I understand the system, I can move through it, because some people, when they get older and they look back at the situation, they then see it from the perspective of the parent who did whatever it is to them, to see that maybe the parent didn't have the capacity to do it. And so there's an element of compassion that may come. And so once I move through it, that compassion would allow me to transform it into something that will bring the spiritual strength, as you're talking about, for me to let it go, and for me to let it be, and for me to move on.
And oftentimes, from what you're saying, it's reminding me of Byron Katie and her work with finding the compassion. And it leads to forgiveness, and it leads to that part of our heart that you spoke about that is innately kind and good, compassionate, and wanting to love, not just wanting to be loved, but wanting to love. And it's
Yeah.
like it melts. When you can do that, it melts all the fear.
Yeah,
It just
and remember, freedom is when you are able to love with wisdom.
Yes.
You know, when you're able, you know, I have this thing that true freedom from fear with insight gives us a zest for life, and it brings new zeal and enthusiasm. But that's a freedom that comes from an insight. Because if it's a freedom that just comes from, okay, you know, I've seen it and it's fine and I'll move on and I'll forgive. But that insight, that wisdom didn't emerge, that strength then didn't emerge. The vulnerability will stay with me. And then that will be triggered at some other point with some other situation. But once there's that insight, that deep wisdom, then that whole fear, my heart removes the blockage, the barrier, or, you know, whatever may have been there. And it lets it go. And there's the insight gives it a new zest for life. You know, I'm truly free of it. I no longer carry any baggage, any weight. My heart is no longer encumbered by that, what happened in the past. I just completely freed myself from it.
And we carry that baggage for decades and
Yes.
decades.
Yes.
Why? Why do we carry it?
Because we don't know how to
Fear.
remove it. Well, actually, the baggage becomes the fear, and we don't know how to remove it. And we don't see fear as something that could be helpful to us. You see, it's our perception of fear as well. And if I don't see fear as a dancing partner to help me transform, I won't be able to get rid of the fear, to let it go, because I'm holding on to it. But then I do need to understand, I need to do some work on myself to understand this creative art of a spiritual heart. That there is an art there that's full of creativity that comes from my heart that will show me how to let go of the fear by making it cooperate with me.
So the handbook is within. There's nothing we can really do but experience it, like the caterpillar in the chrysalis emerging as the butterfly, right?
Yeah.
You
But
have
it's
to go.
fascinating. It's really fascinating because I think a lot of people want to go back to they say it's the authentic self. And I say it's a spiritual heart of the soul that makes me authentic. When I can feel with freedom, I'm authentic.
Yes. Beautiful. So let me see if we have anyone have here's a question. We have a question from Dan. Thanks, amazing subject and speaker. So true. So true. I find when we face our fears, it empowers me so much. Also, much of what we fear is not the thing itself, but the feelings we may experience while trying to overcome it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. And is there another? No, that's it. Anyone else who would like to comment or ask Sister Gayatri a question? Okay. Kay is asking, with yoga and power, we are able to remove that fair. I'm not understanding. Yes, with yoga and power, we are able, with yoga. Would you like to talk a little bit, or before we meditate, about that power of yoga as the door opener?
Well, yoga is a practice. And so in order to practice yoga, I need to have some spiritual wisdom. So yoga wouldn't be effective if I just sit and try to silence my feelings and silence my heart. But if I have wisdom that I can use as tools to navigate the yogic path, then that yoga will become the way for me to be empowered. But what am I using while I'm going through? Because yoga is a connection, it's a union. It's between the soul and its body. You could say that's yoga. It's between the soul and itself, that is, with its mind, its heart, its intellect, its characteristics. That's yoga. Or it could be yoga with the source, with God. Now, the transformative power will come from the source. That's for sure. That will transform the fear. But as I said, I need to know what my fears are in order for it to be transformed in yoga with the source. Because if I don't know what my fears are and I'm just sitting and saying, take all my fears away, then what am I asking for to be taken away? But I also have to do, that's why they say self-realization leads to the realization of what it is you have to transform, how is it you have to transform, and what is it you're getting out of your transformation. And so I think the teachings that take us onto this yogic path are teachings that show us that on the flip side to every hurt and pain and weakness and negativity and vice I carry within me, there is a positive. There is an elevated. To every vice, there's a virtue. And then also what it says, to every vulnerability, there's a strength. So it is, I walk the yogic path with this duality, but then I emerge as a unified being, because the duality then works its way out of being, at opposite, at conflict with one another. And then I move into my authentic self. I move into my true self. And that's what the yogic path is all about. So of course it brings the power. But what are the elements, essentials to get this power? That also has to be taken into consideration.
Yes. So with that, I'd like to invite you to lead us in a meditative commentary. And
okay, and how long do I do it for?
Oh, let's see. It's 7:56, so 5-6 minutes.
Okay. So I invite you all to now open your hearts. They're wonderful spaces within the soul. And my heart is actually the core of soul consciousness. When I feel it, I know that it is. If I think it, I may change my mind. But the heart rarely changes, because once it feels something and it trusts something and it believes in that based on its experience, it's very difficult for the heart to let go of it. So the heart has a permanence to it that is very beautiful. And so this spiritual practice today that I want us to have is called loving kindness. So as you could hear, through my window comes the ice cream van. So we're having natural music. So I invite you to sit on the seat of the soul and center yourself. Would you believe it? It stopped just in front of my window. So sit on the seat of the soul and center yourself. Notice one good thing about yourself and reflect on it that one good thing in the here and the now. Hold this one good thing in front of your third eye. That inner eye of soul consciousness. And visualize this goodness as a core quality in your heart. Now, look through the eyes of the spiritual heart of the soul. May I see my spiritual heart with quiet eyes. May I offer to myself a care, knowing that I may meet this care with gratitude, but sometimes with resistance. But let me choose care. May I feel the loving kindness in the heart of my soul. And let me let go of any fixation of the various forms of the symptoms of my fear. Let me not hold on to any of the symptoms. Symptoms are illusions that I have given a form to. Let me let them go. May I see the limits of these symptoms and what they have done to me, and let me let them go with compassion. May I be undisturbed by the changing feelings that are tumbling within me, that are floating around within me. May I see them as clouds hiding the sun, as the darkness in which the jewel of my love could shine. May I bear witness to the feeling forms and habits of the heart that I have created in my ignorance. And may I see them without the urge to control them. Just let them flow out. May I see my spiritual heart with patient and kind eyes. May I look into the mirror of my spiritual heart and with courage, confidence, and clarity, free my heart from the illusion called fear. May I invite the sacred presence of the source, of the divine, of God, into my sacred heart. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Om Shanti, and thank you. Kindness, kindness, kindness to others, to oneself, to oneself. Thank you for helping us today and for coming here with all your beauty and your wisdom. I do have two short announcements. On Saturday, this Saturday, our speaker will be Marcello Bulk. He's going to be talking about coping with uncertainty. That will be at 11 to 12. And the meeting ID, I believe, was posted on the chat. And next Thursday's Insight Conversation session welcomes, that's October 29th, guest speaker, Sister Rona. And the topic will be the guiding light of silence. Again, Sister Gayatri, there are no words. Thank you so much for a very beautiful evening. And thank you personally for helping me on my continuous journey to my own heart. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And it was beautiful being with you.
Beautiful.
Great to
And
have
thank you, Brother Eric.
here. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Global Harmony House Thursday Night Insight. We'll see you again. Sister Gayatri, Sister Louise, thank you so much. Good
Om
night.
Shanti.
Om.